Thank you, everyone, for sticking around with me during these live internet studies. Sometimes we take breaks like we just did for the last few weeks, and so it disrupts the schedule and the flow. And so I ask for your patience as we do just a bit of recap as to where we're going. These are the live internet studies, and my name is Arlo Ben Lyman Hanavi, and the hour-and-a-half long study is broken up into two segments. Segment one is Eschatology, a biblical study of end-time events. We're studying through a topic known as the Rapture right now, but we've got a view towards the book of Revelation. So if that topic interests you, stick around. The next topic that we deal with in these live internet studies is an apologetic topic entitled A Trinitarian Response to Biblical Unitarianism. And it's kind of a continuation of my exploring the Shema discussions of the issues on exploring the Shema discussions on the issues of Trinity, where we looked at this very complex God of ours through the lens of Father, Son, Holy Spirit, three persons yet one God. And we're continuing along those themes of the Trinity understanding of God, but we're using biblical Unitarian as our counter, I don't want to say counter-offensive or anything like that. The counterpoint, the taking the opposite view. We're almost creating a kind of what I like to think of it as a debate. Except my debate opponent is not here with me live in these studies. We're simply creating an imaginary opponent who's not really imaginary. So if those topics interest you, then stay tuned for the entire hour-and-a-half long study. But you have to wait for either the iTunes podcast to be uploaded, usually about 24 hours after I record the shows, or wait till the end of the week. These live studies are conducted on Saturday evenings, Central Daylight Time in the United States, so just your clock wherever you are in the world, to the CDT America time. But if you wait till the end of the week, since I air these on a Saturday night, that's when the live study is. But by the next Saturday, then I'm uploading the actual video that I recorded. So you got to wait a little while to catch the whole study. Okay, without further ado, let's jump in. We left off 2 weeks ago in the eschatology study. We're in the rapture views. If you look at the topic schedule on my screen right now, we've worked our way through 9 of 18 topics, and we're parked out on topic 10, the yellow topic you can see. Topic 10, 11, and 12 are all grouped together. Rapture views and overview is topic 10. Making a case for the pre-wrath view is topic 11. And rapture views of final analysis will finish out the topic there, the set of 3. And we started by looking at what is the rapture and overview, where we started by looking at, let me just jump through some tabs. We started by looking at Pastor John Piper's answer to the question, what is the rapture? And in his answering the question about what the rapture is, we also learned that his position, the post-trib view, places the rapture in a place that's not where it normally would be for most Christians. And I'll tell you where that is in a bit. But from John Piper's view, which is post-trib, we launched into a look at Dr. John F. Walvoord's view, which is pre-trib, but we used his resource here that you can see on my screen, the rapture and the day of the Lord in 1 Thessalonians 5. We utilized that because Dr. Walvoord is contrasting the post-trib with his own view, which is pre-trib. So, having said that about the 2 of the views, let me turn now to this screen, which just shows 4 of the primary views of rapture that are spoken of in Christian circles. We've got the pre-trib view, pre-tribulationism or pre-tribulational rapture. Just call it pre-trib. It's easier. It's not quite the tongue-twisting mouthful. Well, the pre-trib rapture has the yellow circle rapture happening in relationship to what is defined as the 7-year tribulation, or I like to call it more by its biblical name, the 70th week of Daniel, the 7-year Daniel's last 7-year slice of history that was promised or prophesied to him by the angel. 7 years of history where mankind is going to have his final kind of go at it, right? His final go round, his final effort to either accept God's Messiah, Yeshua, or to try to throw off the Messiah and God and to embrace the man of sin known as the Antichrist. So in relation to that 7 years, according to the popular pre-trib, which is the most popular version in Christian circles these days, the tribulation happens right at the outset or at the beginning of the 7-year tribulation, meaning the rapture itself is not part of the 7-year tribulation, or if it is, it's right at the very beginning. It kicks it off. But most pre-tribbers would say that it's right outside of the 7-year tribulation, and indeed kicks off the 7-year tribulation. And a prominent feature of this pre-trib view is that it's imminent. There's no warning signs. There are no portents. There are no events that need to precede it. It comes without warning. It's right. Once it happens, and Christians are snatched away from planet Earth. After that, the Antichrist hits the scenes and starts causing chaos or whatever he's going to do. That's pre-trib. The wrath of God and the tribulation are kind of synonymous in this view, and they both run the entire 7 years. And then at the far end is the millennium, which is a 1,000-year time period in which Jesus returns to planet Earth. And when he returns, he's going to be bringing the saints with him. He's going to defeat Antichrist at Armageddon and then usher in the millennial kingdom. If I were to... No, I thought maybe had another chart that just shows it. But for now, let's just stay on this chart. So, rapture views, timing, pre-trib, rapture's at the beginning of the 7 years. That's enough for now. Mid-trib, as you can see, places the rapture, the yellow circle on your screen, places the rapture right around the middle point, 3.5-year mark of the tribulation views. And everything else is more or less the same as the pre-trib. Wrath of God is shortened dramatically to 3.5 years. And the second coming, which is not to be confused with the rapture, according to these perspectives. Second coming and rapture are two different events, or two different comings, if you even want to put it in that perspective from the pre-trib perspective. But second coming of Christ, or glorious coming, if you want to call it that. There are other teachers that go with that language. But rapture and second coming are separated by at least 3.5 years in the mid-trib view, millenniums on the far right. The pre-wrath view, just going the way this list shows them, pre-wrath has a unique feature. It has rapture about 3/4 of the way into the 7-year time frame. And what it does with the wrath of God is it distinguishes between what is labeled as wrath of Satan or the tribulation. You can see it on your slide here as pinkish color arrow pointing off to the left. And then rapture's in the middle, and then pointing off to the right is that dark arrow that says wrath of God. And those two are distinguished. It is, in fact, a distinguishing feature and a unique feature of the pre-wrath model to have the wrath of Satan as identified as one thing and the wrath of God is identified as something else. After that, more or less everything else is the same. On the far right of the screen, there would be the second coming, followed by the millennium. And then the last one on the bottom on the screen is the post-trib, which is, according to this slide, shows the wrath of God only occupying about the last half of the 70th week, the 7-year time frame, starting from the midpoint and moving forward. I've seen other slides, like if I scroll back up to this slide, not the pre-wrath view, to this slide for the post-trib, has God's wrath occupying the entire 7-year slice. And therefore, tribulation sits on one half, the first half. Great tribulation sits on the other half, but they're both still tribulation, meaning they're somewhat like the pre-trib, where tribulation occupies most of it. And then what this does is it puts the second coming. Let's go back down to this one. What this does is it puts the second coming and the rapture basically on top of one another at the farthest right of your slide, near the 7-year end. And so rapture and second coming are nearly synonymous, just enough time to quickly go up into the air, meet with everybody, and then just drop right back down to planet Earth, go through Armageddon, and then enter into the millennium. So those are the four views that we're working through. As I've mentioned in the past, the perspective that I hold to at this moment, and that I've actually held to for the past 25 years or so, is really the pre-wrath view. I became a pre-wrather that long ago after reading through the foundational books of Marvin Rosenthal, which is Pre-Wrath Rapture of the Church, followed on the heels quickly by The Sign by Robert Van Kampen, who was a student of Marvin Rosenthal. So that's the view I hold to pre-wrath. Having said that, let's pick up where we left off. We're really still in, as I look at the schedule, we're still really in the Rap Reviews and Overview, where we're kind of unpacking the views and getting a better look at them in detail through the lens of people who hold to the view and are able to express them very well. And I think that's the best way to give a fair representation of the other views, even when I myself don't hold that view, is to give the voice to someone who is a well-known, well-trusted teacher in that particular view and let them tell you what the view is. But having said that, what I want to do is turn to a resource that actually is a pre-wrath resource, but does what, in my opinion, is a very succinct and yet well-represented perspective of the pre-trib view. And so this is a little slightly different than what I would normally expect. The pre-tribulation view is so well known that we've already kind of interacted with that on a bit using Dr. Walvard's notes. But now I want to turn to a resource by a gentleman who I reached out to personally, and he responded and was so gracious enough to allow me to utilize his resources. His name is Aaron Eggman, Eggman, and he wrote a book entitled The Saints Go Up and the Wrath Comes Down. It's available on his website at, well, the book isn't available for free, but I mean, it's a purchase, but he has a website at prewrathresources.wordpress.com. And so I'm going to go ahead and endorse him for the next few studies here. So he is a pre-wrather. This is much is true. But what he did is he put together a short blog article on pre-tribulation rapture beliefs, as we're going to begin to work our way towards the pre-wrath perspective that I hold to. He thought it would be helpful to start by defining and explaining and giving voice to the pre-trib view, and I thought that his explanation was very well done. So let's turn to that and talk about this. Again, he is not a pre-tribber, so when you're reading through this, as I'm reading through this, you have to remind yourself that you're reading this through the lens of someone, I believe, if I remember, he used to be a pre-tribber, like many Christians are currently pre-tribbers. He used to be a pre-tribber, but after doing more research, he turned pre-wrath. And I myself have to say that, to my knowledge, I was never a pre-tribber, even though it's a popular position that's taught in so many churches that it's basically de facto. It's the default position that you would gain in most Christian churches, although the post-trib is close on the heels of pre-trib, and mid-trib has since died down and has kind of been subsumed under the label pre-wrath because of the timing being near or after the beginning of the, near the middle of the 70th week of Daniel. Okay, let's read Brother Aaron Eggman's explanation of pre-trib rapture. And I don't know if this is going to take the entire hour, or really we've got 48 minutes left. If it does, that's fine. If it spills over till next week, that's fine also. I'm not in a rush. But if we're able to get through it sooner than we're done with the hour long, then I'll jump into another resource. We'll start into this one. This time put together by a gentleman who actually wrote a book on all four views that I mentioned earlier, and he's going to basically answer the question: when is the rapture, and what is the rapture, and when will it happen? His name is Professor Alan Holtberg, and I won't tell you which view he holds. I don't want to spoil it for you, but we'll read his notes as been reproduced on biolamagazine.edu's blog. So let's go back to Brother Aaron Eggman. Here's what we have. Pre-tribulation rapture beliefs. Let me just highlight it like that so we can follow along. Here's what he has to say. The pre-tribulation rapture view holds that the saints will be raptured, referred to as the glorious hope, before a 7-year tribulation period that ends with the second coming of Christ, referred to as the glorious appearing. He continues, the defining concept of pre-tribulation rapture is the imminent return of Christ, which refers to a sudden rapture of the saints. The idea of a sudden rapture that cannot be predicted or foreseen is most strongly supported by Matthew 24:36. And we have a quote here. Here's verse 36. But about that day or hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. End quote. Well-known verse if you are a student of end-time studies. Let's keep reading. As well, he says, as verse 42 in the same passage, the same chapter, Matthew chapter 24, and here we have a quote as well. Let me interject. I really like Brother Aaron Eggman's approach to his studies as I've been working my way through his resources on his website. He will often include the full scripture reference that he's making mention of. He'll either build up the idea behind the passage, talking about it, and then he'll outright quote it, or he'll quote it and then tell you his own perspective on it. But it's great to have all the full references in his notes. So let's look at Matthew 24:42 as quoted by Brother Aaron Eggman. I believe his quotations are from NIV, ESV or something. Quote, yeah, or something, right? Quote, therefore keep watch because you do not know on what day your Lord will come. These, of course, are Yeshua's words explaining to the disciples in that famous passage when they ask him the question, what are the signs of your coming and of the end of the age? Tell us, Lord, what's going to happen, and let us know how we can observe, how can we be ready? And as I'm interacting with Brother Eggman's notes here, I'm reminded that when Yeshua gave the answers to the disciples, he gave a healthy amount of details that would give us, not just his disciples, but give us as well, the warnings that indeed we need, so that when the time comes, if we are the generation that encounters the events that he spoke of, we would be warned in advance. The idea is that we have an eye to see and ears to hear, and we are children of the light, borrowing Paul's terminology that will later show up later on in our Bible in the Thessalonian letters. Well, because we are followers of Yeshua, genuine followers of Yeshua, we are not in darkness like the world at large. And therefore, the words that Yeshua gave us are meant to warn us in advance and cause us to have our hearts ready and give us a sense of the urgency of the matter as the day approaches, if we indeed turn out to be the generation that would see those events unfold. And so when we're looking at this pre-trib perspective, it's interesting that a defining feature of pre-trib is that there are no signs. There are no events that precede this imminent rapture. And I find that a bit troubling because it seems to neuter all of the details that Yeshua gave us when he talks about be warned, I'm telling you in advance, I'm letting you know that this is what's going to happen. It seems to destroy the force of Yeshua's words, taken at face value, that there are a lot of things that we can look forward to and that we should be aware of as the days lead up to the second coming. And so keep that in mind as we're working our way down through these notes. So Brother Eggman continues. He says, the concept of the imminent return of Christ holds that Jesus could return at any time. Therefore, there are no events that must happen before the returns. They say Christ comes like a thief in the night and that we must be ready at any moment. We're going to find out later on that even though there are enough passages that do describe the return of Christ coming like a thief in the night, and we are talking about an event that could either be broken up along the lines of two prominent events connected to the one coming, right? The rapture being on one end, the second coming being on the other end, and the day of the Lord being in the middle. We could look at it that way. Or pre-tribbers often will say it's two separate events that are separated by 7 years of tribulation, meaning the rapture is on the front end, or not even really on the front end, it's a separate event, 7 years. Later, the return of Christ happens. But it is important enough for us to understand that when we're talking about this language of thief in the night, by the time we get to Paul, and be aware that Yeshua was the one who began to, who initiated this, behold, I'm coming like a thief language. That's true. But by the time we get to Paul and Peter and the book of Revelation, which pick up on the same language of thief in the night, what we end up realizing is that the concentrated, more focused view of the thief in the night aspect is not reserved for believers, but is actually reserved for those who are of the world at large. They are the ones for whom this day, the day of the Lord, or the day of Christ, or the day of God, or the rapture, or such, whatever you want to call it, that this major event, they are the ones for whom this event overtakes them as a thief. So I think that's worth taking notice of because of the position that pre-tribbers take when they say that imminency is rooted in this idea that Jesus comes like a thief. And I think to myself, well, not exactly if you understand that thief in the night language is meant to be connected or associated with those who aren't believers. For those of us who are believers, by comparison, Paul tells us explicitly that this day will not overtake us like a thief. He tells us so in, I think it's either it's 1 Thessalonians 5 or it's 2 Thessalonians 2. It's 1 Thessalonians, I think it is 5, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. I believe it's that one. So we'll look at it later on just to confirm. So keep this in mind when we're talking about imminency. That's just one of the maybe weaknesses in the imminency perspective is that Paul goes on to say that it's not really the believers that are overtaken like a thief in the night. It's the unbelievers. Okay, let's keep going with Brother Eggman. He continues. He says, the pre-tribulation view believes the event of the rapture is found in these 5 places in the Bible. And here we have them. Matthew 24, 36 through 43. 1 Thessalonians 4, 15 through 17. 1 Corinthians 15, 51 through 54. Revelation 4, 1. And Revelation 12, 5. And I find that interesting that left out of this list of pre-trib rapture passages is the famous Matthew 24, 29 to 31. And that's the passage. Let me just pull it for you so you can see it. There's Daniel, there's Matthew 24 right here.